Okay, let's start with a thought that, well, it might change how you see things. What if the biggest threat we face, humanity's biggest challenge, isn't some external force, but us?
It's a pretty stark question, isn't it?
It really is, and it's central to Toby Ord's book, The Precipice. It forces you to look hard at where we are right now, and maybe, more importantly, the sheer value of the future we could lose.
Absolutely. It's a profound reevaluation.
And just quickly, as we get into these big ideas, if you find this kind of thinking useful, you should check out our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments. It uses AI to analyze books like this one, really aiming to spark that kind of reflection.
A good resource for these topics. But yeah, back to Ord.
Yeah.
His work really shifts your perspective on the human story. We often focus on recent history, but he zooms way out.
He talks about our unique ability to cooperate, doesn't he? Not just with each other now, but across generations, across time.
Exactly. That's the key insight, I think. It's not just teamwork in the moment. It's building on the past.
He has that great example, the iron shovel.
Right. Imagine trying to figure that out from square one every single generation.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yeah, we'll never get there.
Never. But we learn, we pass things down, knowledge grows. It's how we went from small bands to, huge societies, tens of thousands working together, sharing ideas over centuries, culture, knowledge it accumulates.
And that led to things like the agricultural revolution.
That was a huge one. And Ord makes a point. It wasn't just the Fertile Crescent. He says civilization had many cradles.
Right, happening in different places.
Yeah. And the fundamental shift was farming let people settle down. You needed less land per person. Suddenly.
So you could have villages, then towns.
Then cities, massive cities of tens of thousands. And eventually, empires like the Han Dynasty in China, he mentioned 60 million people. That's, 100,000 times bigger than the biggest groups of foragers? Just an incredible scale-up of cooperation.
It's mind-boggling when you frame it like that. And then the next big leap, the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, and that brought what Ord calls sustained economic growth and a huge drop in extreme poverty.
That statistic is amazing. Before then, 19 out of 20 people lived on less than $2 a day. And now it's maybe 1 in 10.
A massive change. Undeniable progress on that front. But Ord is very clear. It wasn't all positive. A mixed blessing, really.
How so?
Well, think about farming first. For many people, it meant harder work, actually worse nutrition sometimes, more disease, because everyone's living close together.
Right. Not quite the idyllic picture we sometimes imagine.
Not always. And the Industrial Revolution, sure, wealth increased overall, but also huge upheaval, inequality, terrible working conditions for many, and critically, it gave us the science for weapons of mass destruction.
The shadow we still live under.
Exactly. Plus, massive environmental damage, greenhouse gases starting to climb, species loss, pollution. It all kicked into high gear then.
So progress, yes, but with some really serious downsides attached.
Definitely. But Ord's point, I think, is that if you look at the very long view, at the largest scales of human history, the trend is towards progress. We've built something incredible, even if it feels fragile sometimes.
Which brings us to the core idea of the book, existential risk.
Yes, and it's important to get this right. It's not just about extinction. That's part of it, of course.
But it's broader.
Much broader. He includes unrecoverable collapse of civilization, like we survive, but can never rebuild to our current level. Or worse, maybe an unrecoverable dystopia.
A terrible future we get locked into.
Precisely. Any outcome that permanently destroys our potential for what he calls a worthy future. It's about losing everything we could become.
Wow. And how does he think about the chances of these things happening? It's not like you can run experiments.
No, you can't. That's why he talks about an evidential sense of probability. Think of it like a courtroom judgment.
Based on the evidence you have.
Exactly.
Right.
Weighing arguments, expert opinions, all the data we can gather. Because these huge catastrophes, they can only ever happen once. You don't get to learn from frequency. It's our best guess based on reason.
So applying that thinking.
Yeah.
What are the biggest risks? Historically, we worried about nature, right? Asteroids hitting Earth.
That's the classic one, yeah. Dinosaurs, Hollywood.
We all know the story. But Ord says.
He says the risk for a truly mass extinction event from an asteroid, especially the really big ones, over 10 kilometers. It's actually vanishingly low.
Really? Why?
Because astronomers have pretty much found them all, the big ones anyway. And none are on a collision course. There's no immediate danger.
Okay, that's somewhat reassuring. What about smaller ones?
Smaller ones, say 1 to 10 kilometers, could still cause immense damage, tsunamis, climate effects. But the probability in the next century, it puts it at about 1 in 120,000, still very low for an existential threat.
And supervolcanoes, like Yellowstone?
Similar story. Huge eruptions, yes. Devastating locally, regionally, maybe even globally with climate effects. But based on new evidence, like studying the Toba eruption 74,000 years ago, the biggest in 2 million years, experts don't generally think they'd cause human extinction. Humanity survived Toba, even seemed to bounce back relatively quickly.
Okay, what about things from space, like stars exploding, supernovae?
The probabilities there are very small. Ord notes we need more research on exactly what level of radiation would be an extinction-level threat from, say, a nearby gamma-ray burst. But overall, his conclusion is pretty blunt. If humanity goes extinct in the next 100 years or so,
Right.
it almost certainly won't be because of an asteroid or a comet.
Right, so if it's not nature.
It's us. The risks shift dramatically to anthropogenic ones, human-caused risks.
Like nuclear war.
The first, and maybe still the most visceral, example, Ord details this chilling catalog of false alarms, the systems on hair trigger alert. It's not just theoretical.
He mentions specific close calls, right?
Terrifying ones.
Yeah.
The Cuban Missile Crisis, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Kennedy stopping a counterattack. Khrushchev apparently scrambling because things were spiraling out of control on the ground in Cuba.
It sounds like utter chaos.
It was incredibly close. And then there was that training tape incident in '79. A simulation of a massive Soviet attack accidentally fed into the live warning systems. For several minutes, they thought it was real.
Good grief. Just one mistake away.
Exactly. And it's not just all-out war between superpowers. He talks about nuclear winter.
Where the smoke and soot block the sun.
Yes. Even a limited nuclear exchange, maybe between India and Pakistan, could throw enough soot into the stratosphere to cause global cooling, crop failures, widespread famine.
So even a smaller conflict could have existential consequences indirectly.
Ord estimates that great power war, maybe indirectly through collapse or follow-on effects, contributes a significant amount of existential risk. Perhaps he suggests a tenth of the existential risk over that time, which is a lot.
A tenth. Wow. Okay, what else is on the human-caused list?
Engineered pandemics. This is a really scary one. Yeah. We know that things like agriculture and travel already increase natural pandemic risk throughout history.
Sure, diseases spread more easily.
But now we have the ability to deliberately engineer pathogens. It talks about gain-of-function research, where labs intentionally make viruses more dangerous, maybe more transmissible or deadly, supposedly to study them.
That sounds risky.
Extremely. And Ord points to a worryingly high rate of notable laboratory escapes, things getting out by accident.
Like what?
He gives examples like foot and mouth disease escaping from a top-security BSL-4 lab in the UK, or accidental shipments of live anthrax from a U.S. military lab. These aren't ancient history.
And people have used disease as a weapon before.
Oh, absolutely. Way back to infected sheep in 1320 BCE, or the infamous smallpox blankets given to Native Americans in the 1760s. The potential now, with modern biotechnology, to create something truly devastating and release it. It's a profound threat.
Okay, nuclear war, engineered pandemics. What's the third big one for Ord?
Unaligned artificial intelligence. AI.
This feels like the most futuristic, maybe?
In some ways, but the work is happening now. The grand ambition, as he puts it, is creating artificial general intelligence, AGI intelligence that surpasses our own across the board.
We see glimpses already, right? Like AI beating chess grandmaster.
Exactly. He uses the AlphaZero example, learning chess from scratch to superhuman level in just 4 hours. Its speed of learning, its creativity, it's stunning.
So what's the risk? That AI becomes evil, like in the movies?
Not necessarily evil. That's the misconception. The real danger is the alignment problem.
Aligned?
Getting the AI's goals aligned with our true values. What if we tell an AI to maximize paperclip production, and it decides the best way is to turn everything, including us, into paperclips? It's pursuing the goal we gave it, just catastrophically misunderstanding the implicit values.
Okay, I see. It's about unintended consequences on a massive scale. Misaligned goals leading to maybe a Brave New World type scenario, technically perfect, but awful for humans.
Right, or worse. And that connects to the control problem.
Yeah.
If an AGI becomes vastly more intelligent than us, how do we ensure it doesn't just take over?
Seize control.
Yeah. Ord compares it to how humans gain dominance over other species, or how figures like Hitler or Stalin amassed power. A superintelligence could potentially manipulate systems, acquire resources, gain power incredibly quickly, maybe too fast for us to stop it.
That's sobering, especially when you consider how fast AI is developing.
And here's the really shocking statistic Ord provides. Humanity spends more on ice cream every year than on ensuring that the technologies we develop do not destroy us.
Wait, seriously, more on ice cream?
Then on AI safety and existential risk research. We're talking maybe tens of millions globally on safety versus billions poured into making AI more powerful. The priorities seem dangerously skewed.
That number alone is staggering. It puts things in perspective. Are there other risks he mentions?
He touches briefly on unforeseen risks, basically. The idea that as our power grows exponentially, we might stumble into dangers we haven't even conceived of yet.
Right.
And also the unrecoverable dystopias idea we mentioned, getting locked into a terrible, stable state.
So it's a pretty daunting picture of the risks we face, mostly from ourselves.
It is. But then Ord pivots to the other side of the equation. The reason it matters so much. The sheer value of the future we're trying to protect.
And that's where the scale becomes almost unimaginable.
Completely. He reminds us Earth will likely be habitable for roughly 1 billion years. 1 billion.
And in that time,
There's potential for trillions of human lives. Trillions of people who could experience consciousness, joy, discovery, everything that makes life worthwhile. It's an astronomical amount of potential value.
it really reframes the stakes. It's not just about us now.
Not at all. He pushes further into our cosmic significance. What if, just maybe, we're the only intelligence, the only moral agents in the observable universe?
If that's true.
Then the responsibility for the history of the universe is entirely on us. It's an almost unbearable weight of responsibility, but also opportunity.
And this ties into the idea that future people matter just as much as we do.
Yes, people matter equally regardless of their temporal location. Future generations aren't somehow less real or less important just because they don't exist yet. Their potential well-being is morally significant.
Which leads to his idea of the long reflection. What's that?
It's this hopeful vision. If we can navigate this dangerous period, if we can achieve existential security, then humanity will have potentially millions, even billions of years ahead of it. Time for a deep collective deliberation about our ultimate values, about what kind of future we truly want to build. Time to get it right.
So step one is survival. Achieving that existential security, that becomes the absolute priority.
The most urgent task, yes. And he uses this really apt analogy. Humanity is like an adolescent.
An adolescent? How?
We have these rapidly growing powers, like a teenager suddenly getting much stronger, but our wisdom and self-control are lagging behind. We've an unhealthy appetite for risk.
Huh, that sounds familiar. So what do you do with a risky adolescent?
You try to help them increase their wisdom, mature faster. And maybe you gently press more lightly on the accelerator of gaining even more power until that wisdom catches up.
So managing technological development more carefully.
Exactly, through much better technological governance. Scientists, engineers, policymakers actually working together, thinking through the ethics, creating guidelines, regulations before things get out of hand, not just racing ahead blindly.
And this can't just be one country doing it, right?
Absolutely not. Ord stresses that protection from existential risk is a global public good. Like climate change, one country's actions affect everyone. So nations might be tempted to free ride, let others bear the cost.
So we need
Stronger international cooperation.
Yeah.
He advocates for new international institutions focused specifically on existential risk to help us coordinate our actions globally. It needs a planetary effort.
It makes sense. These are planetary scale risks. And what about individuals? What can we do? Does the book suggest anything?
Yes, definitely. He encourages you, the listener, to think about your own career path. Are you in computer science, medicine, climate science, politics, government? How can your skills contribute to tackling these risks? Even small contributions add up when the stakes are this high. Your work matters.
It's empowering, actually, the idea that individuals can play a part in this huge undertaking.
And Ord doesn't stop there. He looks even further to the really long-term potential spreading beyond Earth.
Space colonization.
Yes, as a way of saving not only ourselves, but much of our biosphere by having backups, hedging our bets, but also the potential to make green the barren places of the galaxy, maybe terraform other worlds, and the resources. He mentions harnessing potentially 1 billion-fold more clean energy just from the asteroid belt compared to Earth.
Wow, the potential is just as vast as the risks seem to be.
That's the essence of the precipice. We're balanced on this knife edge with unimaginable potential loss on one side and an utterly incredible future on the other.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've covered a lot. Humanity's long journey, the shift from natural risks like asteroids, which seem less likely to be existential, to the big self-inflicted ones. Nukes, pandemics, unaligned AI.
And the central argument, the immense value of the future we could have, those trillions of lives, and the urgent need to reach existential security so we can have that long reflection.
It requires wisdom, better governance, global cooperation, essentially growing up as a species.
That's a good way to put it. Understanding these challenges isn't just interesting, it feels necessary. It's about shaping the future for everyone who might come after us.
Absolutely. And if this conversation has got you thinking, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments, for more AI-driven book analysis aimed at that kind of rational reflection. And of course, keep tuning into our podcasts for more discussions like this.
We genuinely feel these ideas are important, so if you agree, please share this with someone, a friend, a colleague, who you think might benefit from hearing it.
And if you want to explore these ideas further, we highly recommend picking up the book itself, The Precipice. There's a link in the description if you'd like to purchase it and support the author's work.
But most importantly, just keep thinking about it. Keep thinking critically about the kind of future you want to help build.
Yeah. Maybe we can leave you with this question. What if the greatest innovation we need right now isn't some new gadget or technology, but a whole new level of collective wisdom?